Here we are. Get myself set up here a little bit. Well, what are we going to talk about today? We're going to be talking about ICE. Boy, they're really doing some nasty stuff. Last week they killed Renee Nicole Good, and now they killed Alex Pretty. What's interesting about it, what I find a bit odd, is that unlike last summer when they were killing people, they were made sure they were in detention and nobody could see them and there's no recordings. Now they're doing this out in public, and they're doing it with the intention, it seems, that it get recorded and that it gets broadcast all over the country. So this is being done purposefully. What else makes me think that is when the killing of Ms. Good was broadcast or publicized, a little afterwards, the government released the camera footage from the killer's own camera. Now, when that came out, my immediate assumption was, oh, it's a leak. It's somebody who's a whistleblower on the inside. It didn't occur to me at that very moment that this was being broadcast or being released intentionally, almost gleefully. Bizarre, don't you think? But they did it that way, as if they're proud of that. And the ICE agent was basically filming his little own private snuff movie. He was filming his murder of Miss Good. I mean, think about that. That is so. It's definitely sick, definitely psychotic. Something you would see in a horror movie. But to have it supported and excused and rationalized by our government and by the institutions of our government, the Department of Justice. Department of Justice justifying on-screen murder. I don't know, words fail me. So the other thing was, that was a week ago, and the question was, how long will it take before it happens again? And the answer was not long. A week later, killing Alex Pretty. Again, the guy's held down, he's immobilized, his gun is taken away, and then he's shot several times. Basically he's executed. That's not mere murder, that's execution. Now that's two. And somehow Trump and his gang think that this is all okay. The problem is, what I find also interesting is that MAGA group, the hardcore supporters of Trump, they're also great supporters of they're great supporters of the Second Amendment. So they're looking to use their guns or have their guns and not have the government take their guns. And yet here is ICE and Kristi Noem talking about, unlawful use of guns. So the guy had a permit, doesn't matter. He had a gun, so he had to shoot him. That's I don't know where to go with that. But one thing I'm looking at is how can Trump think that that's going to be okay with his group, with his supporters? Does he really think that that's going to be okay? It seems to me that that the MAGA supporters are going to have a hard time bridging that gap in their mind, in their head. How they're going to support Trump when Trump is attacking one of their dearest principles. I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. I don't think it's going to go down well politically. I think that already he is, by doing these and by publicizing these, he's motivated the Democrats to get out and vote. I mean, usually the Democrats are, one reason why they lose elections is because so many Democrats seem to take elections for granted. They just don't really get involved. They're not that involved politically, at least historically, not as much as Republicans. So in any election, typically the Republicans have a higher turnout than the Democrats. I don't think that's going to happen this year. This year, I think the Democrats are going to be running very high in turnout, and I think that high turnout by Democrats is one thing that explains the disconnect between the polls and the votes. If you notice in the polls this last year, Trump has basically hovered between 42% and 50% in that area. More towards 50% at the beginning of the year and more towards 40% towards the end of the year. But the elections, such as the ones in Kansas and in Iowa and in Wisconsin and other areas, the one in Tennessee just not long ago, you see a shift towards the Democrats of 15, 20 points. The one in Tennessee was only 13 points, but still it's a sizable shift that the polls don't seem to be picking up on at all. And I think what's going on there is that the Democrats are much more highly motivated. And actually, I think even some independents are highly motivated. So the turnout's more, and the turnout is anti-Trump. Simple as that. It's anti-Trump. And that's just going to get worse. It's not going to get better. Trump is not doing anything to try and ameliorate or calm or soften. He's doing nothing like that. If anything, he's hardening and doubling down. That's not going to be good for the election in 26 for the Republicans and for Trump. But as a matter of fact, I'm going to be having another discussion later on about that because I'm predicting a realignment this year. Now, let me define what a realignment is. Normally, when you have some issue that's real important to the nation, you can get what's called a wave year. This happened like in 1974 when we had the Watergate crisis, Watergate trial, and Democrats did very well after that. They had a wave year. Democrats picked up a bunch of seats in the Senate and the House. But it was just that 1 year. It didn't maintain itself. It was really like a wave. Came in, washed up, and then goes away. It's a wave. 1 year. And that's what a typical wave year is. A realignment is different. A realignment sustains. So, for instance, the last true big realignment in the United States was in 1932. That was when the Great Depression occurred. Remember, that was after the Smoot-Hawley tariffs. See a parallel there between the Smoot-Hawley tariffs and the Trump tariffs? And so in 1932, there was a realignment. Because before that, the Republicans dominated Congress, House and Senate, for, 30 years or more. Basically, I think they dominated since the Civil War. So what is that, 60 years? So they dominated that whole time. And in 32, it switched. And by a realignment, we mean where people actually don't just simply vote differently that one year, but they actually change internally within themselves. They change their identity and their own personal alignment as to who they are aligned with, Republicans or Democrats. And in 32, went from the Republicans to Democrats. And now the Republicans and Democrats were not the same parties as they are today. They are very different parties. So that really is, there was the realignment is important, but the fact that it was from Republicans and Democrats really doesn't mean much, because Republicans and Democrats were very different parties back then. Democrats were of the South, and as well as of the northern big cities, but they also had a lot of rural areas were Democrat. So it was different than it is, totally different than it is today. But the realignment concept is what I'm trying to get across. That realignment in 32, I think, is going to be similar to what we're going to be occurring at the end of this year. The Republicans are going to lose not just the Senate and the House. They're going to lose big, by the way. I'm predicting 58 seats for the Senate, and I'm going to have another few videos talking about how I come to that conclusion, because my analysis is way different than Silver or Let's Talk Elections or any other current pundits out there. My analysis is very, very different. But my process is different as well. I'm doing a different way of analyzing. I'm not just merely going by the latest polls, because I don't think the latest polls are very accurate anymore. I think polling has to some extent a little broken right now. They're getting some things right, but they're getting other things very wrong. Like all these special elections we had last year, which had that 15, 20-point swing to the Democrats, none of them picked that up. Not one election was picked up by the polls, as far as I know. If you do know one, if there is a poll out there that did call any of those elections, please let me know. I'd be curious. But like I said, from my knowledge, from my information, there is no poll that succeeded in calling any of those elections. Anyway, so with ICE doing these killings, that's going to have an impact on the 2026 elections. I think they're going to have a couple of different effects. One effect I already mentioned is giving MAGA voters an excuse, if not a reason, to abandon Trump, because Trump now is it's basically attacking the country now on almost every level, and now attacking gun owners. That's not good for his base, and his base is probably already receiving a lot of guff from friends and relatives who've already switched from Trump, and they're getting pressured. Because remember, these MAGA voters, they don't exist in a vacuum. They have friends, they have family, they have a community that they're in. And I believe that most of them are herd voters. They follow their herd. And when that herd moves, they will move as a herd. They're going this way, then all of a sudden, they're going that way. And that, I think, is going to, that's going to have an impact. I think that it could make it even worse than it would have been otherwise. Because this attacking a gun owner and taking him down because he has a gun, that is not sitting well with the MAGA voters, from what I could tell. Saw a couple of videos on YouTube that talked about that, and I found that very interesting. So So I'm not sure what to make of it from that standpoint. Uh, okay. Well, anyway, I'm going to sign off right now. Um, I'm going to be having another video, where I'm going to be talking about something very different. I want to talk about Taiwan and how it can or can't survive an invasion from China. It's going to be a different topic. Anyway, I'll be talking to you later.